Good evening, everyone, and well, first of all, from my side, a very warm welcome to this Belgium event in Davos. Extremely happy that Davos can take place again physically. Isn't it good to be able to see each other again alive and to use the full potential of Davos, which is basically to discuss difficult things, listen to each other, and see how we can find each other in improving the state of the world. I'm extremely happy on the Belgian side to also have here Petra de Sutter, who is Vice Prime Minister in Belgium. Petra, please maybe raise your hand so all of you can see that you're here. And we have the Minister President of Flanders, Jan Jambon, who I think just came in on time. Please, Jan, raise your hand so everyone sees that you are here. Now, for this Belgian event, you know, I could take half an hour and tell you about all the great things we do in Belgium. And you would say, you know, you're a politician, you're a prime minister, how much should we believe you? So we thought, let's do it a bit in another way and invite two people who really are examples or really at the top of some of the domains in Belgium where really we are second to none. And I'm extremely happy to, first of all, have the honor to introduce to you Pat Gelsinger, who's the CEO of Intel. And I have to say, I'm extremely happy that you accepted this invitation, Pat, and happy to have you on this panel. Also have Peter Piot. Peter Piot used to be the head of UNAIDS, was the right hand of Ursula von der Leyen during the whole COVID pandemic, and still is in the domain of pandemic preparedness. And Peter, extremely happy to have you here. You've been a long-time warrior of all these Davos events, and happy that you're willing here to talk about all the expertise we have in healthcare in Belgium. So what I wanted to start off with, you know, an event like this one, the World Economic Forum is about economics and about how can we improve the state of the world. And if I thought about, you know, what's the most tangible thing of improving the state of the world, I think it's health. And we've all become very much aware how vulnerable we are. And so, to me, one of the reasons why we are here is to see how can we improve the health of people, of as many people as possible throughout the world. This, for me, is having an impact. This, for me, is really improving the state of the world. I think we all want a good life. Well, it's difficult to have a good life if you don't have access to good health. So, Pat, you are not an expert on healthcare. That's why I'll start with you. Is from your view, with all the expertise that you have in your domain, if you look at global health, and if you look at the developments in the world, if you look at demographics, if you look at the technological capabilities that we have that you have today, I mean, what concerns you if you look at global health, and what are actually more of the global messages that you would want to give?
Well, thank you so much, Prime Minister. It is a pleasure to be here and share a stage with you. And you know, one of the things that you know, while I'm not a healthcare expert, my chairman of the board is. We have Omar Ishrak here, who was a CEO of Medtronics. Now he's my boss, so all of you say nice things about me to him, okay, for it. But Omar used a simple phrase the other day that really caught my attention, that healthcare is an infinite market. How many of you don't want to have more healthcare to live longer, to have a higher quality of life, right? And as you have a longer and healthier life, you spend more money, so you fuel the economy. So it truly is the only infinite market, right, that we have in front of us today. But today, healthcare clearly is not accessible to all, not leveraging technology, stunningly. And I'm not sure if this is still the case, but I studied different vertical markets, you know, across, retail and finance and, you know, industrial and so on. Which market had the lowest penetration of IT? Healthcare. Isn't that stunning? right? You know, that the lowest percentage of IT spend of any industry was healthcare, and I found it quite remarkable. You know, when we look at the challenges of healthcare today, clearly we have a supply-demand imbalance, which is only going to get worse, right, as we go forward, because we're aging, right? And we're about to cross over, I think it's 2030, you know, that we will have, you know, 1 in 3 adults who have multiple conditions, but we'll have more over 65 than under 5 for the first time in history, right? So we have this aging population. Everybody knows as we age, we need more health care, but it's also inaccessible across the world. We don't, you know, we don't have accessibility across the community, right? And it's also not affordable, right? So we have the lowest penetration of IT. We have an infinite market in front of us, right? And how do we solve those problems? And fundamentally, as a technology company, you know, we believe that you know, the power of technology, right, is the source, right, of so much possibility as we look to the future. And we view that as sort of at the center of care of the future. And I was just with Stefan Barnell, the CEO of Moderna, who I've known for many years. And I said to Stefan, thank you for saving the world, for the Moderna vaccine. And he said, no, Pat, don't thank me. I thank you for giving me the computers to simulate mRNA that could save the world, right? And we see that this power of underlying technology is truly extraordinary. So with that, we see that how do we unleash technology will be the answer to how we solve the healthcare crisis as we look to the future. You know, we see that there's just enormous areas that we've yet to penetrate healthcare with the power of technology. You know, we at Intel, we call what we call the 4 superpowers. One is everything is computing. Right? We're putting computers in everything. Since the 4004, 50 years ago, we now stick computers into everything, into light switches, you know, into glasses, into your pockets, into everything is a computer. Every computer is getting connected, right? Right? And as things get connected, it's not just people getting connected, right? We're now at about 60% of humanity has a persistent connection to the internet. That will be 90% by 2030. You know, 90% of humanity, you know, we will have finished connecting the world right before this decade is out. Isn't that incredible? But as soon as we get done connecting people, now it's connecting things, which become every monitor, every service, every piece of data associated with it. So we have computing everywhere, we have connectivity everywhere, we have infrastructure that can compute those with new capabilities like AI, which we can bring sense and capability. And we consider these the 4, you know, superpowers. But we need then to take, how do we take that data and apply it in powerful ways for the healthcare crisis that we're all leaning into, right? To make healthcare accessible, to make it personalized, to make it intelligent and affordable to all. You know, we just, you know, and are you ready for your data to be used by some crazy doctors to improve the healthcare of all humanity? Maybe yes, maybe no. So how do we then solve problems of anonymity of data, privacy of data, right? Which are probably, you know, there are concerns in every industry. You know, when you're going online and shopping, you give up your privacy all the time. But do you give up your DNA footprint all the time? Right? And we're now getting much closer. So we have to solve problems in new ways. We have to deal with things, and like one of the things we did, a distributed ledger, you know, based analysis that allows us to have anonymity of data sets, but still being applied collectively to solve problems. And we just did a distributed project with the University of Pennsylvania, so I can say, yes, I want to use your DNA to solve humanity's problems, but without ever exposing any private information and data. So there are many unique problems to the healthcare segment, you know, but fundamentally the superpowers, we think, give us the tools that will enable healthcare that truly is accessible, intelligent, and affordable to all.
But if you allow me now, let's go to the crazy doctor then, like you said. Peter, knowing indeed, I think you coined it very well, healthcare is an infinitive market. Indeed, I mean, we always want more, we always want better. Looking at the challenges we have, if you listen to what Pat just said on the possibilities that we have in computing power, in integrating artificial intelligence in the work what you're doing, are you optimistic or pessimistic?
Well, thanks, Alexander. I'm actually optimistic, but first of all, I'd like to say that indeed, computing, data analysis, bioinformatics, etc., has been underutilized in health. And if it was being utilized, it was for, you know, either improving or making the bureaucracy worse, you know, from my perspective. And, but not to actually influence and also provide better health. And let me give two examples, and building on what you say. The first one that I've been quite busy with, like the Prime Minister and others here in the room, pandemics, pandemic preparedness. There's no doubt that we're entering what I call the age of pandemics. We'll see more of them. Sorry that I don't come with a better, nicer message, and COVID is not over, but it's all much better than before. And here, data are going to be absolutely crucial. In the first place, for early warning, to know as soon as possible, because we cannot prevent the emergence of new viruses and new outbreaks. What we can prevent is that they, you know, evolve and get out of control into a pandemic. And for that, we need to know. And that means not only better surveillance, but also better data analysis, better instruments for sequencing, for interpreting all that. And that's where, and also, of course, sharing that information. And this is where I think there are now lots of initiatives that are emerging. Maybe too many, but we'll have to bring them together. That's also a top priority of HERA, the Health Emergency Response Authority that the European Union has set up. And it can only work if every single country in the world is taking that on. So that's the first point. And the second one, and maybe you will not expect from me, but that's what I call healthy longevity. We're all living longer. We're kind of sitting with our head in the sand sometimes as a society, certainly in Europe, but also I you know, was recently in Singapore. There it's a top priority in the government is healthy longevity. I want to die healthy, but at an old age. And that means a few things. One, this is where data can help a lot, and data analysis, and that is to have earlier detection of all kinds of diseases that you get when you're getting older, so that we can have better, earlier treatment when you can really increase not only you know, the life expectancy, because we've done that quite well all over, certainly in Belgium also, but also the quality of life, and have then precision medicine and earlier interventions, and at a cost that is lower. So that's one thing. But also, healthy longevity starts when you're a child. It's a lifelong you know, behavior. And here again, you know, with AI, with machine learning and so on, we can help people to guide their lives. I mean, if I have a watch that gives me my heartbeat and everything and my goals and so on, you know, yes, you have a ring, okay, you're more sophisticated. I like to see things. You know, this is also another example. And so we're going to, I think, to an area where this is going to be very key. And judging by the number of startups in this field, something big is going to come out of it. However, it has to, when talking about healthy longevity, for example, we need to make sure that the elderly who didn't grow up, I mean, I'm not a 20-year-old, you know, that we can also have friendly tools that are accessible and available to all.
Yeah, and I think the progress is tangible. I mean, remember, COVID is now, it started approximately 2 years ago. Now we talk about monkeypox.
Yeah.
I mean, how fast are we? In Belgium, we've had 5 cases. We have been able to trace them down within 6 days to know where was it coming from. It's coming from a case in Portugal. Within less than a week, we are able to trace where things are coming from. We've learned so much things in COVID, and see how fast we are able to do it these days. You want to comment on?
No, as long as we don't forget all that, because often it's like after a war, we say no, never war again. Here, we have to make sure that what we've learned, we maintain, that we have some systems in place, the people. It's not huge expenses, but that we are ready and not forget. But indeed, monkeypox has been a good example in our countries where in no time we could have all the information. That probably would have been not the case a few years ago, because we've learned. Yep. But we need to have that learning and also share it all over the world, because one of the lessons is that also it's not over until it's over everywhere. So you can't just do it in in a single country.
Yeah. Now maybe let me move to a second topic is shortages. And how do you deal with difficulties like that in moment of crisis? And there is a reason why those two gentlemen are on stage. Is first of all, well, in healthcare, the world discovered the cluster that we have in Belgium. We were by far the biggest producer of vaccines for the rest of the world, and we really, in all domains of healthcare, are extremely strong in Belgium. And in semiconductors, where there's big discussions about shortage, we have around IMEC in Leuven really a research center which is second to none, and we can go more in detail to it later. And we thought, let's take two domains which are far away from each other. Let's put them on stage and see how we can put something together. But if you look at the difficulties in supply that we've had, which are, I guess, unavoidable in moments like of crisis, knowing on what you have in your hands, I mean, what do you think would be tools we should be able to use to avoid these types of supply shortages that we have seen and that we're actually still experiencing today?
Yeah, and it's been a extraordinary couple of years. And let's just maybe say, how did we get here, right? So 30 years ago, 80% of semiconductors were produced in US and Europe. And today, 80% of semiconductors are produced in Asia. Was there ever a vote taken by US Congress or by the EU to get rid of this industry? No. But there was votes taken in China, Taiwan, and Korea to aggressively attract this industry. And basically, I viewed the supply chains of the world were focused for the last 3 to 4 decades on just in time. And now the world needs to know supply chains need to be just in case. Right? We had no concept for resilience of supply chains. And essentially, for a penny cheaper of a supply chain, we've allowed all of our supply chains, right, to get optimized into very few places in the world, right? And what's happened the last 2.5 years has basically woken the world up to realize, cost isn't the only thing that matters for our national health care, our national security, and our worldwide economy. So we've seen this extraordinary shift. Obviously, we're very active in this respect. We're actively campaigning in the US with the CHIPS Act, which hopefully gets through Congress in the next couple of weeks here. Really. And EU has been...
Tell me if you think we can help with that.
Yeah. Well, right. Our friends in Europe started a year later, and the EU CHIPS Act is more progressed than the US one is. So, right, the member state chaos and all of the other things that you say bad about Europe, right, particularly if you're on the other side of the pond, I say, just fabulous what we're seeing Europe do in this respect. So, really moving quickly, and obviously we announced our major facilities, expansion in Magdeburg, Germany, right? The Prime Minister has still not forgiven me by picking the wrong country for that.
No, we said at some point it's a choice. If you're looking for some financial support, we can't help you with that. If you're looking for brains, you should be in Belgium.
And obviously with Luc here and IMEC, we're thrilled by that. But fundamentally, and we've said, it's not that the world needs to cease from globalism. Right? We're going to have interconnected supply chains. The world is highly connected. But what we need is geographically balanced, resilient supply chains. We've set a moonshot in semiconductors that from 80-20 to 2080 that we go to 50-50. 50% of the world's semiconductors in US and Europe and 50% in Asia by 2030. A rebalancing of the supply chain, with the announcements that we've made here in Europe, our objective would be that we will have a sand to systems supply chain fully through European countries. And that's what we're now working on, and really thrilled by the warm embrace that we've seen here in Europe for those projects. And with good luck, we'll be groundbreaking on each one of them over the next 12 months, and we'll be keeping all the brains that Luc has here fully consumed with our projects.
Now, on the supply chain discussion with semiconductors, we've seen it. The equivalent on the healthcare side is delivery of care, and we've seen how difficult it is actually in a pandemic throughout the Western world, but also in the rest of the world, how complicated it is these days to make sure that healthcare delivery can take place. Peter, you've been active all over the world, very active in Africa as well, in the world of tropical diseases. If you see the progress that is happening in technology and the prices of technology going down, do you think that using technology, using data, using artificial intelligence is something that could help in improving delivery of healthcare to the rest of the world?
Yeah, I really think that we can leapfrog, thanks to technology. And before that, just a comment on Belgium also. One of the main reasons that besides the good food and so on, that I returned to Belgium, re-immigrated after more than 30 years, is this thriving biopharma ecosystem, which is just fabulous. When you think that probably the majority of people in I don't know, half of the world have been vaccinated by vaccines made in Belgium. And when you see the ecosystem that we have, it's not that well known, but it's fabulous. And when a small country of 11 million people accounts for, 25% or so of I now have to see that I don't say stupid things, but the export, we're the third world most important exporter in pharma products. And that's because there is this, you have universities, you have research institutes, you have the talent and so on, the brains. And that is really, and that's very important. I think that a small country has advantages in a sense, because we are, we can easily produce far more than we need ourselves. So blocking an export of products is not going to, it's not even needed or so pressure. So that's why I think we can continue and thrive on that. Now for AI and machine learning, I think on the one hand, healthcare will always be a people's business. It will be the human touch is really important. And we've seen the limits of that during COVID with consultations and so on. They're fine. But you don't want a robot to announce that you've got cancer or you've got HIV, something like that. So that part will always be necessary. But we have to recognize, and sometimes the medical profession is a bit of the obstacle there or reluctant, that with machine learning and AI we can do much better than people, and particularly in imaging. That's where in healthcare we're seeing that now that has been most advanced. And so eliminate, in a sense, what I can be pretty boring, long series of analysis. And that is together with the fact that all these machines are becoming smaller and smaller. You can do today an ultrasound, you can save lives and pregnant women and so on with your smartphone. That kind of things. You can diagnose all kinds of infections and even cancer, again, thanks to a combination of what I would call miniaturization of the hardware, but then also the machine learning that is coming out of this data. But that means also that companies have to invest in data collection and in learning from the whole world, and not only from high-income countries, because what you can learn is different. So I think we will go to a revolution, just as the mobile phone, we're talking about Africa, has taken over communication before the landlines are even there. So, and that's what we're going to see with the, with this whole, I would say, AI and digitalization.
Can I just pile on two little things there? One is, and I think the study is still accurate, but it may be maybe a year or two out of date, that AI-driven radiology is 85% more accurate than doctor-driven AI radiology. Yeah. So how many of you want to have AI-driven AI? Well, you say, but what if I'm the 15%, right, that was wrong, right, from the machine? 100% of doctors who are AI-assisted give better results.
Yeah.
Right, so you look at data like that, right? And this is just stunning, right? Just saying now my AI-driven image recognition is 100% of the time producing more accurate results. So it's not one versus the other, but how does it produce better results consistently?
Also for skin lesions and anything that's imaging, there we're there, I think, except that we haven't done the same exercise in all the ethnic groups and all over the world. But for the rest, we're there.
Because that adds to often we talk about artificial intelligence. It's actually a word that I don't like. From my perspective, it's not artificial intelligence, it's augmented intelligence.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that helps us as human beings to take decisions based on additional information we get. And I think what you said about imaging is the best example of that.
Yeah, it's just incredible because, you know, how many radiologists, you know, how many images does a radiologist look at before they're certified to be able to do cancer image detection? You know, thousands, right? You know, and, you know, with doctors and so on like that. Well, a deep learning process, we might put 10 million images, you know, through the AI detection. Right, you know, it's just the magnitude that you can do when you've automated and brought digital technologies to the same problem is just on a dramatically different scale.
Yeah, think of screening for breast cancer, mammograms, you know, for cervical cancer, all that. I think that's going to be a revolution and will be an improvement and save lives.
But then, I mean, if I listen to you, you should be spending more time together, because
Yeah, we already know where he's living. I know the place.
because both domains in which you have expertise are bound to come closer together. How do you actually incorporate that in the way medicine is being organized these days, which is also a domain which is kind of classic in the way things are being organized? We also, as human beings, have our fears and our privacy and so on. I mean, if you, let's say, I would give you 10 young people today that start their training as a medical doctor. I mean, how would you organize it in a different way to capture everything that Pat just said?
Yeah, first of all, the new generation is already far more tech savvy than well, when I was a medical student. These things didn't exist anyway. So that's it. We're starting with a very open mind and people who are, you know, savvy, tech savvy. That's one thing. Secondly, I think it has to be incorporated into the whole medical training and the practice, and also in both in outpatient department and in hospitals. At the moment, as I said, it's all about administration and so on, which is really a disincentive. You know, because that's not what you want to spend your time on as a doctor. So you have to incorporate in the medical education. That means that the older professors have to incorporate it. And that may be a bit of a challenge. We also, in the London School, I started a master's in health data science. And where we opened it for people with a medical background, but also people with a computing background, and bring them together. Because we need to speak the same language. You know, you've got fantastic algorithms and so that developed and have nothing to do with the real world. And then you've got doctors who develop something that is also not so great from a computing perspective. So it's bringing together. But then I think also, depending on the healthcare system, there need to be incentives to make it happen. And then you get into the nitty-gritty, like in Belgium, how much does it cost to do this and what is reimbursed and so on. So the whole system has to be revised. The same in the US. I mean, it's what is reimbursed, what is, you know, what is rewarded, where are the incentives? And I think we need to change the incentives, and then it will happen.
You know, if I, you know, maybe if I pile on to one piece of that, the data science piece of it. If you're in financial services, by law, they may not throw any data away. Right? You know, by law, you know, it has to be reportable, and if I remember right, it's I think you have to keep any data, transactional data. I think it's for 100 years, right? That we could record, you know, re-record. I'm not sure what the European equivalent is, but think about that for a second, right? 100 years from now, I could check your bank transaction and what you did, and by law, they're required to keep it. In the medical industry, more than 90% of the data is discarded. Right? You know, less than 10% of the data is actionable. Right? You know, here, you know, data, right? It's what we're mining, it's what we're creating, it's what we're finding new insights around, right? And every aspect of data science needs to be applied to the medical industry as just one example. You know, I think as you go back to it, you know, because that is the minefield that, you know, or, you know, that's the gold mine that's being used by data scientists and AI. Right, you know, create more and more data so that we, you know, have essentially computers that are writing software to analyze data themselves, right, and producing insights from it. But today, more than 90% of all medical data is discarded. Right?
Yeah, you know, and that's again where the EU has this Mr. Sutter knows there is a proposal discussed on health data, and to make it kind of uniform throughout the EU, but also the basic principle being that who owns the data? It's the person, the individual, the patient, he or she, or before you're a patient. But then what you can do with it, that it can be, we can learn more from it, the protection. So a right balance, which is important against protecting privacy, but also making sure we can use it to learn for clinical trials, if you move from one country of one city to another, that it's all going with you. And that I hope will get through, because that will be a revolution. And again, maybe the US can come, and then we can provide some technical support to do this. Yes.
It can.
We'll bring the US data, since we can't use the European data, and we'll bring your intelligence and be able to do it. So.
No, I think in the end it can only work, of course, if the public trusts the system.
Yes.
And I think related to healthcare, it's a key element, is that we all trust, of course, that a healthcare system is going to make good use of the information that we provide, but it can only work if we're really confident on how that would work. What I would like to do maybe now is to use the next 10 minutes to open it up to the floor. If you would have questions, Madam, I see you raise your hand. We'll provide you with a microphone. Can we? Well, the microphone is on its way. No, Pat, you're supposed to answer, I think.
Wait. It's you. You have a question?
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
My name is Lakshmi Praturi. I'm a long Intel employee, no longer, but great fan of Intel and all of you. My question is about the diversity of the data set. On one hand, it's about collecting as much data, and there have been cases, especially in medicine, where some predictions were made for a solution for an Asian person or a woman because the data set didn't have that at all. What are some of the things that are happening for the diversity of data sets? And just would love to know. And Peter, great fan of your work. We had you at IDS Med before, and great fan of your work. Thank you.
Madam, we'll only put people on stage who are great. I mean, you don't have to doubt on that. No, I wasn't talking about myself. Touché.
But I was.
No, and I knew more about Intel in India than worldwide. But anyway, no, that's exactly the point I was making, that in order to make this useful, not only worldwide, but in our increasingly diverse societies, we need to collect the data of the people. The people have to be inside. You say Intel inside, well, people inside machine learning. And there are many examples. Certainly you start with skin lesions and so on. The color of the skin plays a role, but also we know that, for example, cardiovascular disease and diabetes, the profiles are very different. Now in India, there's a lot going on in this field. Also in Singapore, and Singapore is very interesting because you have people of Chinese origin, Indian origin, Malay origin, and some European. And so they're comparing and all that. That's how we'll have to learn. But for me, would be the top priority. And frankly, we can have that in a year's time if there is the effort being done.
Yeah, and maybe if I could just add one little point to that. This idea of having data anonymity, but still data integrity, right, associated with it. To me, it is most prevalently a problem in the healthcare area. Right, and if we're going to be able to start to do, cross-sectional views across ethnic and other, people groups, this one is the one that needs to be solved. Now, on a broader sense, as a computer geek for 40+ years now of my career, the problem that we need to solve is around the security of the platform. You all should stop bringing your lives onto computers if we don't do a better job with the security aspects of the platform, right? And that just has to be, this, demand writ large that people say, if I can't trust the underlying platform, why are you putting every aspect of your personal life on it, right, as well? And this to me is the issue, and probably no more, domain-centric than the healthcare industry, is the reason that we can't make these things broadly available. And it's one of the things certainly we want to drive at Intel, as you well know, and we're going to do a lot more in that area.
I'll give maybe the word to Luc van den Hove, who's the CEO of IMEC. And for people who don't know IMEC, you really should look it up. It's the premier research center in semiconductors in the world. It's a result of a very active industrial policy managed by the Flemish government years and years ago. It really has grown into the place where the whole world comes to do their research in semiconductors and in nanotechnology. Please, Luc, go ahead.
Thank you, Alexander. So, great debate. I really concur with everything Pat and Peter has been saying. I think there is indeed this tremendous opportunity to extract far more medical insights from this massive amount of data. I think fully agree with that, and I think that was the central theme of the debate. But I believe that, and it's our role to kind of look also 5 to 10 years ahead, and I believe that microchip technology will also have tremendous opportunity if we look at the miniaturization capability, and I think, Peter, you hinted to it at some point, the miniaturization capability and the massive parallelization that we can realize on silicon in order to develop kind of new diagnostics and even new ways to do the biomanufacturing. Diagnostics, I mean, DNA sequencing is one very good example, which has been fully enabled through semiconductor platforms, and we've been working on some of these concepts years ago, which now allows us to do like a full human genome sequence in 1 day, less than 1 day. And I believe we're far from the end there. I mean, sequencing is going to become like a routine diagnostic technique. And many other diagnostics will be based on the miniaturization capability of chips. But also the fabrication of vaccines. Once we know the code through the sequencing, we can start thinking of synthesizing mRNA, for example, with a specific code that we extract from the sequencing. And we can think of ways to synthesize the mRNA right on a chip using very complicated microfluidics. And we're actually working with some of the pharmaceutical companies in Belgium to demonstrate some of these, I think, what are revolutionary concepts, which will, I think, change the medical and pharmaceutical industry in the future. And all of this will generate even more data, kind of an exponential growth, and it will indeed become one of the major drivers also for the semiconductor industry, I believe. So these are some additional comments I wanted to make on this.
Yeah.
We're just at the start.
I see a gentleman in the back raising its hand. Let's do 2 questions here, and you, madam, I think you raise your hand, and then it will be the end of the event. But we'll cover your 2 questions at once.
Then I'll ask only one.
Okay, good.
Joe Peterson, a physician for 33 years, entrepreneur for 23 years. I guess a question and a plea. When you talk about AI applied to medical data, you're talking about patients who are in the system. Please extend your investment to getting patients into the system. AI and mammograms, very cool, fascinating. I'm sure there are dimensions of it that I don't know. Less than 10% of women globally will ever have a mammogram. In the United States, based on claims review that we've just done, 62% of women with Cadillac insurance from Anthem Blue Cross will never have a mammogram. So it's fascinating technology, and we're watching it evolve, and we have a technology-based business. But I would just ask you to think about and maybe talk a little bit with everyone about how you're continuing to keep the human being involved. Because if they, as someone said to me once, the best screening test is the test the woman will actually come and do. So it would be interesting to hear about how maybe you're looking at supporting not only the application of AI to existing technologies, but also to supporting emerging technologies that will eventually be part of your AI consumer base.
Great question. Let's bring the microphone here to the lady in green, if I can call you this way.
You certainly can. My name's Claire, and I'm from the CEPI, the Coalition for Epidemiological Preparedness Innovations. And we develop vaccines and countermeasures against viruses of pandemic potential. So the last 2 years have been pretty busy. But we see, as we are entering the era of pandemics, as Peter put it, that it's increasingly hard to maintain government and private sector attention on preparedness for pandemics and global health security in the context of multiple stacked crises globally, many of which are equally as existential. what would you say? How can we keep that attention up? How can we keep the beat of the drum going to maintain attention in this sector?
I'll let both of you answer both questions as also closing remarks if you want to add something.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'll just say, I don't know. Right, the world gets bored. Right, and then we move on, and then we learn the lessons that we thought we already knew. And as I would say, one wise saying was, wisdom is learning the lessons you thought you already knew. And I think, pandemics, when was the last time the world fought through one? Right after World War I, right? And it took us about 30 years to learn the basic influenza vaccines after that. This time it took us 1 year to have a fully deployed vaccine, and it took us 1 month to have it fully sequenced and understood. So, clearly technology has enabled a progression, but I'm not sure that we've fixed the world's amnesia yet.
Peter, maybe on that and also on the element of how to bring more people into the system. I thought it was a really great question.
I'll start with that. It's a good question. Well, first of all, the systems are very different. In Belgium, it's much higher. Because we have like universal health coverage, and so that's quite a different. But there are many countries where that's not the case, and I totally agree with you. It's just like a vaccine only works if you give it, people take it. But there also, I've seen now research that was using, not only machine learning, but detailed data on who is not coming and why and so on. And then you can, concentrate your efforts to reach, in this case, those women also. But it requires, an investment that is actually not so big. But then the rest, I think, is really is mostly a political issue more than anything else, as far as I'm concerned. And so this is one of the things that we are very proud of in Belgium. We have one of the best healthcare systems in the world. And having worked in several ones and being a patient in some, I can say that that's the case. Now, how to keep attention? And as a former board member of CEPI and founder of CEPI, can say that this is really a big concern I have. And I would say a few things. One, we need to, now that the epidemic is still there and it's not over, and it's highly predictable that by the winter we'll have another surge. Okay, hopefully not so bad because we have the vaccine and we vaccinate everybody perhaps every year, so on. But that we put in place the systems now, as the Prime Minister said that, for example, when something that is not as bad, but okay, it's real, like monkeypox comes up, that we are ready. And that requires that an investment which is nothing compared to what we've invested the last 2 years or to spend. So that is, and that's at the European level, this is what HERA is then, because health is not a competency, legal competency of the European Union, but for epidemics, no borders. But then I think also trust came up several times. We have to understand people, what will, what makes them tick, what is the, how to keep attention where it's necessary. And I think that some data may be important here, but unfortunately what I think will happen is that there will be now and then these, like now, monkeypox, and then suddenly people, it's kind of this cycle of panic and then forgetting. No, and action. So we need to have these systems. I'm usually not a plea for someone who pleads for setting up new systems. It's the other way around in my case. But in this case, we need it. And having all the information so that people can see, yes, when we have a problem, we're ready. It's just like we have a fire brigade. I remember, like it was in New York City. At some point, they were closing down the fire brigades, and then you're surprised that their houses are burning. So we need to keep the fire brigade alive and not just setting it up when the house is on fire. And that's what we have to do now at this stage.
If I may, a vision of the future. What time do you normally wake up in the morning?
That's kind of an intrusive question. Somewhere between 6 and 7.
Okay, 6 o'clock. Tomorrow morning, right, your alarm goes off at 5 a.m., right? the voice comes through your alarm clock and it says, last night I noticed a heart irregularity, the third one you've had this month. We've decided that we need to schedule you for an appointment today. I've pre-scheduled your doctor's appointment. Your personal devices now, all that information has been uploaded, and we've done a full DNA analysis of everybody fits your age, your ethnic community, et cetera. You know, the schedule is already there. Since I pre-predicted the driving pattern to get to your hospital appointment, I had to get you up an hour early. Apologize, sir. Right? I've preloaded the directions into your self-driving car. Right? I've also moved your coffee order from your normal Starbucks to one that's on the way. And we are going to the heart doctor, so I made it decaf.
Very nice. Well, let me finish with that. And first of all, thank these two rock stars in their domains, and really extremely grateful that you accepted our invitation to be on stage. As I said, I think you should spend more time together, but I understood that's not going to be a problem. But please give Peter and Pat another round of applause. Thank you for a great conversation. And then for all of you, I know that you have extremely busy schedule. We've given you a bit of a taste of what we're good at in Belgium. Talking about tastes, there are other things we're good at. If you enjoy our beers and other culinary things, we have a wide range of Belgian beers here available. So please stay around, talk with us, and enjoy a good evening here in Davos. And we'd be extremely happy to, of course, see you in Belgium or see you at a next event. I also want to say, the next event, we will make sure that our stage is more diverse. No one made the remark, but we should. So thank you.